Today's review is this Thermaltake ToughRAM RGB. It's a 16GB kit of DDR4 memory, so 2 times 8GB, rated at 4600 MHz, which is a mighty fast speed. Price £157. On the face of it, a compelling purchase. I have not yet tested this memory. I'm kind of doing this introduction almost as a prediction of how I think the review might go, so I might have egg all over my face quite shortly. The positives of this memory, I'm sure the RGB is going to be good. Thermaltake does good RGB. Their control software, also good. 4600 MHz might be good. The benefits of extremely fast memory, they frankly, diminishing returns would be the best way of describing that. £157, that seems perfectly reasonable for 4600 MHz memory. You could buy also from Thermaltake 16GB of 3600 MHz memory for £99. So you are paying a premium for 4600 MHz, no denying there. The fly in the ointment, as far as I'm concerned, is likely to be the timings of this memory. 19, 26, 26, 45 at 1.5 volts. That doesn't sound too good. Relatively slow and quite juicy, and that's not a good combination. The timings make a big difference to pricing. So for example, if we look at Corsair, their Vengeance RGB Pro 4000 MHz are rather slower than this. They do some CL19 memory that will cost you £179, also for 16 gig, or CL18, which will cost you £191. So they're charging another £12 to take one off the CL timing. So for Thermaltake to choose CL19 for 4600 MHz memory at a price of £157, I can see what they're doing. They're trying to sell this memory based on the RGB and the monstrous high 4600 MHz, and we're going to push the timings to one side because, you know, who knows what timings really mean. That's what they're trying to do, I think. But I'll find out when I get busy testing. The first job is to sort out a test platform. Thermaltake's QVL list for the 4600 MHz memory tells us it is compatible with both Intel Z490 and AMD X570. Running fast DDR4 on AMD sounds like a bad idea. AMD has this valley of death beyond 3600 MHz. This is way beyond 3600. However, if we head over to the ASUS website, pick a random ROG X570 motherboard, we can see on the ASUS QVL list that yes, very fast memory is indeed supported on at least that X570 board. There is of course a huge difference between supported, works well, gives you a benefit. These are all very important nuances. If we head to Thermaltake's own motherboard QVL list for the 4600 MHz memory, we see there are no AMD X570s listed at present. Seems like the best thing is just to avoid AMD for this review. Intel Z490 is a different story. Thermaltake lists a number of ASUS and MSI motherboards. I happen to have one of those supported MSI boards, the MPG Carbon. I've also got the EK variant of that board. I'll be doing a standalone review of the EK hopefully in the next few weeks. I did an unboxing a few weeks ago. It's quite popular, so a review is called for. At present, Thermaltake does not list any Gigabyte Z490 boards. That cannot be because Gigabyte and this memory don't work together. It has to simply be a question of Thermaltake not having time to do the testing. So I am going to willfully select this Gigabyte Z490 Aorus Master as the basis of my test platform. The parts of our test system are the Gigabyte Z490 Aorus Master running on BIOS F6. The processor is an Intel Core i9-10900KF. CPU cooler is a Fractal Design Celsius S24. Graphics card is a Gigabyte RTX 2080 Super Gaming OC 8GB. SSD is a 1TB Intel M.2 NVMe. Power supply is a 1300 watt Seasonic Prime Platinum. In total, we're using 4 sets of DDR4 memory. This Corsair Vengeance LPX is a 32GB kit. We used this in our launch review of the Core i9-10900K. XMP settings are 16, 18, 18, 36 at 1.35 volts, and it uses Samsung B-Die. As it's Vengeance LPX, there is no RGB. Next we have G-Skill Trident Z Royal. This is the Gold Edition, running at 4000 MHz. XMP settings 17, 17, 17, 37 at 1.35 volts. also using Samsung B die. When Intel launched their Z490 chipset, Gigabyte sent us a set of Aorus RGB memory rated at 4400 MHz. It's a 16 GB kit rated at 1926-26-46 at 1.5 volts using SK Hynix D die. We can't find this memory on sale, but it seems interesting and you'll see why shortly. And then we come to the Thermaltake ToughRAM RGB. Rated at 4600 MHz, it also uses SK Hynix D die, just like the Gigabyte memory. Timings are 1926-26-45 at 1.5 volts. Very slightly better than the Gigabyte, and again, it's a 16 GB dual channel kit. Corsair Vengeance LPX has no RGB, and a very low profile heat spreader, which is superb if you're installing a large air cooler. When you're using an all-in-one, the height is fairly irrelevant. Understated is the best description for this memory. G.Skill Trident Z Royal. Wow, look at that RGB. Bling to the nth degree. Moving on to Gigabyte Aorus RGB, the heat spreader is the same height as the G.Skill. The RGB lighting is less spectacular. You can clearly see the LEDs through the light diffuser. Overall, the effect is perfectly pleasant. Thermaltake ToughRAM RGB is the tallest memory in this roundup. You can clearly see the LEDs aren't at the top of the diffuser. There are some millimeters of material above the LEDs. The light show, frankly, is uninspiring. It's perfectly okay. If anything, the Gigabyte is better, and Thermaltake trails behind the G.Skill. The four modules side by side in order of height. Thermaltake the tallest, then we have G.Skill, Gigabyte Aorus RGB, Corsair Vengeance LPX. I've got Gigabyte RGB Fusion 2 software installed to control the motherboard, and that is also currently controlling the memory, which is typically the case. Software will control over SPD. For fun, I've also installed Thermaltake's own ToughRAM software, and while it's showing various pretty patterns and such like, they're having no impact on the memory whatsoever. It's quite clear that you can't have two sets of software running one lot of lighting. So if we shut that down, if I change that to pulse, and now you can see it's pulsing. Let's hit the lights so it's more obvious. And good old rainbow unicorn colours. Make it faster. Perfectly pleasant, and then back on with the lights. Yep, you can see it, but I'm not bowled away by the RGB. It's time for benchmark results. Cinebench R20, the memory makes no difference. In 7-zip benchmark, decompressing the memory does not play a part worthy of the name. Compressing memory plays a big part. The winner here is Corsair. The way they've used Samsung B die inside two modules of memory to make 32 GB rather than the more typical 16 gig, they've essentially doubled the bandwidth. That works very nicely and the results are clear to see. Beyond Corsair, the Trident Z Royal comes bottom of the pack, followed by Thermaltake and then Gigabyte at the top of the heap. Sandra also shows that the way Corsair has used B die yields benefits. The results in Ada 64 are intriguing. Basically, faster is better. I was quite surprised to see how well the G.Skill Trident Z Royal running at 4000 did against the 4400 and 4600 MHz memory. You have to think that's something to do with the performance of Samsung B die, which is tried and true, versus SK Hynix D die. Nonetheless, the results are fairly clear. Corsair Vengeance not doing so well in Ada 64. In 3D Mark Time Spy, we're looking at the CPU score. Here the results are very similar to 7-zip. So once again, Corsair leaps to the fore. The relatively low clock speed is helped out by the configuration of the memory dies. Does a very nice job indeed. I ran 3 gaming benchmarks. Deus Ex Mankind Divided at 1080p. The memory appears to play no part whatsoever. In Middle-earth Shadow of War at 1080p, you can see some difference in the memory, but it really is small. You're talking 1 FPS, which is pretty much within margin of error. And then we get the oddball. Shadow of the Tomb Raider on highest IQ 1080p. Corsair storms to the fore. After that, the second best memory I would say was the Gigabyte, which is entirely unexpected. Then the G-Skill Trident Z, and then the Thermaltake. In other words, the results are more or less random, but it feels like the Corsair wins and the other three, they basically tie for second place. If I was to pick one of the 4 sets of memory, I would probably pick the Corsair Vengeance 32GB kit running at 3600 MHz with low latency. And indeed, I did select the Corsair memory for the launch review of Core i9-10900K. It looked good on paper, it behaved well. The results have been verified today. The thing is, the Corsair is relatively expensive because it's a 32GB kit rather than 16, so you're paying £290 for the kit. So that's about £150 for a 16GB version, which is the ballpark we're in for the other 2 kits that have prices. The Gigabyte, as I say, is not on sale. There is no price. It would be priced somewhere around the £150 mark. I've little doubt of that. Thermaltake 157, G-Skill, which is notoriously expensive in the UK for the more exotic kits, is £199. My takeaways from running tests on these 4 sets of memory is I would err towards Samsung B-Die rather than SK Hynix D-Die. I don't think that's going to surprise anybody. Pushing for higher clock speeds, I think it's misguided. The 4000, 4400 and 4600, there's just nothing in it. 3600 memory is fast enough provided the timings are tight, and Corsair proves that very nicely. The way Corsair has packed those B-dies into their LPX memory to come up with 32 gigs in 2 sticks rather than the more expected 16 gig shows that the configuration of the chips also affects performance in addition to giving you more capacity and of course doubling the price. So in terms of bangs for the buck, Corsair Vengeance LPX, it does a blooming good job. In terms of aesthetics and bling, G-Skill Trident Z Royal looks absolutely fantastic. We've subsequently looked at their Neo memory, but the Trident Z Royal, I like the look of that a great deal. I'm going to stick to my guns with my initial appraisal of the Thermaltake ToughRAM RGB. The headline figure of 4600 MHz, neither here or there. The slow timings don't help it in the slightest. It turns out it's running SK Hynix D-Die, which is not a selling point in my opinion. The RGB, it's a letdown. I've seen really good RGB from Thermaltake in the past. This is just average. So overall, I think I'd prefer to walk away from this memory. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If I haven't already said it, hit the bell button and subscribe. Now, head over to kitguru.net for more news and reviews.